Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Here in this video, we're going to be going over Tesla stock, all of your breaking news that you need to know. And there's a lot of it. I'm surprised Tesla is down today. It's down at the time of recording this video around 0.2%. And given the news that we have, that's quite surprising. Little bit of a reset day, if you will, for Tesla. Not really a signal of what is to come. And we'll talk about that throughout this video. Now, we also had Jerome Powell that gave a new speech, and we have some headlines to go over in that regard. Other Fed officials had, there was a bunch of Fed speakers today, and we're going to get into all of that in your broader market news today as well, here in today's episode. In the meantime, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Ladies and gentlemen, check out that link down below in the description of this video. We have identified a few opportunities, if you will, that are underappreciated AI stocks that have 10x plus opportunities. If you want to check it out, link down below in the description of today's episode. That's not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Contact one if you have any questions. I just like to spot and point out opportunities and invest in said opportunities. With that said, let's get into all of your Tesla stock breaking news today. Always, we will start with your Tesla news and then get into broader market news. So first and foremost today, Tesla will soon launch operations in Colombia, making it the second country in South America with official Tesla presence after Chile. Tesla has posted multiple job positions located both in Bogota and Medellin, from Tesla advisor, service technician to sales manager roles. On X yesterday, the official Tesla account again is asking for shareholders to vote their shares. They say, Tesla shareholders, we need your vote. Our next chapter will help create a world we've only begun to imagine and put the world on a path toward sustainable abundance for all. To make this future a reality, we need your support. We are asking shareholders to vote with our board's recommendation on all proposals. And they have the instructions here on how to vote. This news in and of itself today, it is surprising, to say the least, that Tesla is not moving higher on this. Another analyst, Mizuho analyst Vijay Rakesh, has increased his Tesla price target to $450 from $375 while maintaining an outperform rating. Tesla is giving Canadian buyers a $5,000 discount off the purchase price or unlimited free supercharging for life. You can choose either if you take delivery of a new Model 3 by September 30th, 2025. And this is probably one of the biggest pieces of news today. 17,300 new Teslas were insured in China last week, the best week of Q3 2025 so far, and up 13% week over week. If we get data like that, news like that, and the stock is still not moving higher, I think it's just one of those days where it's a bit of a reset. And now you can see Tesla slightly in the green today, but IWM's up 0.5%, Nasdaq slightly in the red, S&P is slightly in the red as well. So it looks to be a little bit of a reset day. There's no news that explains why Tesla's not going up another 3 to 5%. Right? I think Tesla should be up 3 to 5% based on the news we've got today. Okay. So maybe it's a little bit of a reset. Tesla's RSI is at 78. To see a slow and steady kind of move higher is what you want to see. I do believe we're going to get a leg higher to new all-time highs and put us into the 500s, maybe as high as 520 or 530, and then you're going to see a bit of a consolidation phase. Probably come back down, test support at 580, maybe even test support at the 488 previous all-time high level again, before you move higher again into November, December, really the end of the year as people get ready for 2026. So maybe today's just a little bit of a take a breather kind of a day, but you don't want to forget about the news. The news today was really positive. Tech Dev Notes on X shared this news that OpenAI and NVIDIA announced a strategic partnership to deploy 10 gigawatts of NVIDIA systems. He says, what does this mean for XAI? Are we cooked? Elon Musk says, just as we will be the first to bring a gigawatt of coherent training compute online, we will also be the first to 10 gigawatts, 100 gigawatts, and 1 terawatt. Terawatt, I believe that's how you say it. Terawatt. So Elon does not seem concerned at all with NVIDIA and OpenAI's partnership. Tesla says that its all-electric semi-truck will save California transport operators $320,000 over 800,000 miles of driving and $75,000 over 200,000 miles. In this perspective that they gave with the Uber partnership with Uber Freight recently. Nissan has unveiled its next-gen driver assist AI technology called ProPilot, which the company says will be on par with Tesla's FSD when it is released by March 2028. They say, quote, "We think ours is smarter than Tesla's FSD, just not as polished as a product," said Nissan. The prototype vehicle features 11 cameras, 5 radar sensors, and the next generation LiDAR sensor, demonstrated on area prototype vehicles in downtown Tokyo. The system combines Wave AI driver software with Nissan's ground truth perception and next generation LiDAR. Tesla's patent for part of the unbox process was just granted. This is partially how the Cybercab will be built. The patent describes a system that uses a robotic station with special holders for each car part. The parts are located in place with vacuum clamps, then glue is applied to either the part or the car frame. The robot lines everything up using a fixed reference point, presses the pieces together, and the glue starts bonding. This process is faster and more accurate because the glue can fill small gaps and workers can keep assembling while it cures. Overall, it makes car building quicker, more consistent, and less dependent on manual labor. It was actually wild. I watched kind of like a Mythbusters video on the Cybertruck glue, and that shit is like, I don't even know how that's made on Earth. They took a Cybertruck and they glued the bumper on, and they added, it was like 10,000 pounds to it, and like hoisted it in the air. And it was like the tiniest piece of glue. Like, I think it was like that wide with like a thin layer that held the Cybertruck plus like 10,000 pounds. It was something crazy. Just like little bit of glue, like size of like a hockey puck, just like that thick, held all of that in the air. It was incredible. I don't even know how, like, where or how that shit is made, but it is like next level, next planet kind of stuff. So when you hear glue, it's not like super glue. It's like shocking. In option activity today for Tesla, you have 50 different trades totaling $32.05 million with a positive order value of 52%. So it's a little bit slower today than it was yesterday, or certainly over the past week. Yesterday, you had 252 different trades from hedge funds and institutions totaling $172.13 million with a positive order value of 73%. Over the past week, you've had 1,741 different trades totaling $2.43 billion with a positive order value of 85%. So it definitely slowing down a little bit today, but still pretty good overall. Short interest of free float at 2.8%, $34.14 billion sold short in Tesla, totaling about 79 million shares. And here on the day today, you have about 79,000 shares that are being covered by hedge funds and institutions. So short sellers are covering a little bit today. Now, let's get into your broader market news today. Jerome Powell, Trump, other Fed officials, so on and so forth. And you have House Democrats to meet September 29th in D.C. to discuss the government funding situation, which the government is set to shut down on October 1st if there is no agreement to fund the government. So time is of the essence. Powell says after the September cut, the Fed is well positioned. Powell says the public trust in economic and political institutions has been challenged. Those in public service must focus tightly on critical missions. Powell says we will make sure one-time increases in prices does not become ongoing inflation problem. Powell says tariff increases will likely show up as somewhat higher inflation over several quarters. Powell says disinflation for services continues. Most long-term inflation expectations are consistent with the 2% goal. And again, Powell says reasonable base case is that tariff-driven inflation effects will be relatively short-lived. Powell says goods price increases largely reflect tariffs, but not broader price pressures. Powell says consumer spending has slowed and businesses say that uncertainty weighs on their outlook. Powell says labor market is less dynamic and somewhat softer. Powell says economic growth has moderated and downside risks to employment have risen. Powell says uncertainty over inflation's path remains high. Powell reiterates there is no risk-free policy path ahead. Powell says that downside risks to employment shifted the balance of risks, prompting last week's rate cut. Donald Trump said today in his speech to the UN General Assembly, he says, quote, "I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell." Yeah, that's one way to put it. And then Trump says, "I believe the speech was very well received." Donald Trump says, "You are destroying your countries. They are being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They have been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody has ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe." Trump says climate change is the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you are involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. Trump said, "I ended 7 wars and never even received a phone call from the UN offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the UN was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle and teleprompter that didn't work. Thank you very much." And Trump says without the US, Brazil will fail. Trump on trade says we've used tariffs as a defense mechanism. Trump on gas prices says they will be much lower a year from now, and he praises currently falling gas prices. Trump said, quote, "If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail." And I'm really good at predicting. Iran today meets with France, UK, and Germany for nuclear talks at the UN summit. Trump says this is the golden age of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited. Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. Trump says renewables are a joke. They don't work. Trump says to anyone bringing drugs into the US, we will blow you out of existence. Bostic says today the move up in the neutral rate is a welcome thing. Bostic says right now I think the neutral real rate is around 1.25%. It's possible neutral rate is rising. Bostic says the risks to employment are comparable to the inflation risk. Trump says the UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them or finance them. Bostic says sentiment around risks to employment have gone up a lot. Trump says the UN is funding an assault on Western countries. Trump says uncontrolled migration is a top issue of our time. Bostic says the story we hear from businesses is not hiring and not firing. Fed Bostic says the job market slowdown is a little of both supply and demand. Trump says we want a cessation, basically ending, of nuclear weapon development. Says if we ever use them, the world may literally come to an end. And Trump says he calls on every nation to end the development of biological weapons. Trump says that Europe must immediately cease all Russian energy purchases. Trump says for tariffs to be effective, Europe needs exact same measures. Trump says that China and India are primary funders of Russia's war. Trump says if Russia is not ready to make a deal, the US is ready for tariffs. Trump says, I thought ending the war in Ukraine would be easier. Trump says the stock market is doing better than it's ever done. Bostic says today we need to pay very close attention to consumer psyche. Bostic says firms are feeling cost pressures and limits to not passing them on. And as Foreign Minister Wang Yi, in meeting with U.S. lawmakers, says Taiwan issue is China's internal affair. Trump said that Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. Fed Bostic said, I could support a 1.75 to 2.25% inflation target range at some point down the road. So this is one of the first Fed officials that publicly has said maybe 2% inflation is a little on the low side. Maybe it's going to be more on the higher side. Basically what he's saying. Bowman says inflation target range works for other central banks. China's Huawei has announced its 3-year vision for overtaking Nvidia's chips or AI chips. Fed Bowman just said today she sees 3 rate cuts total for 2025. Trump urges Democrats to become quote unquote realistic. Trump said to Democrats on the government shutdown, quote, the ball is in your court. Trump says, I have decided that no meeting with Democrat congressional leaders could possibly be productive. And Trump says today we must keep the government open. This is something that's going to start mattering more and more throughout the week as we get closer to next Wednesday, which would be the first day the government would actually be shut down, because normally a government shutdown is not really too big of an issue. It's something nobody really cares about. But in this kind of labor market with an economy that is not exactly, or labor market that's not exactly doing so great, a government shutdown this time around could be more negative than typical. Normally, stock markets don't care about government shutdowns. The government was shut down for 45 days during Trump's first term. Did people care? Not really. Stocks did their own thing. But this time around, it could cause a little bit of uncertainty and uneasiness out there, and it's something we should pay attention to. Fed Bowman says the tariff impact on inflation will fade. Inflation is otherwise near target. Bowman says we'll need faster cuts if the job market continues worsening. Fed Bowman says if demand conditions do not improve, businesses may begin laying off workers. And some of these comments when I seen these at like 9 o'clock in the morning today, I said in the trading community, I said I tagged everyone. I said Fed Bowman, very scary headlines coming out. This is one of them from Fed Bowman says, quote, the Fed is at serious risk of being behind the curve. Fed Bowman says it's time to act decisively on rate cuts. Like, time is of the essence. Let's not wait. Fed Bowman says, I'm worried the Fed is behind the curve on the labor market weakness. Policy may need to adjust faster if risks materialize. Fed Bowman says, I supported a 1/4 point cut, but it is important the Fed now must proactively support the job market. So like some of these comments, sound good for rate cuts, but it's like, damn, why is Fed Bowman so nervous? Goolsebee said, right now, I'm not thinking about 50 basis point cuts. Goolsebee says, I think rates can come down some if we're on a path to getting inflation back to target. He says neutral is 100 to 125 basis points below current rate. So neutral would be technically 4 cuts away or 5 cuts away from right now. Fed Goolsebee said, we did not move the inflation target. Powell says that companies have slowed hiring to see how policies shake out. Powell says, I can't say AI is the main reason. Powell says not hiring may be one way of passing on tariff costs. Fed Powell says the hiring rate has really dropped. And Powell says due to AI, some jobs are going to be quote unquote phased out. Fed Powell says some asset prices are elevated versus historical levels. Equity prices are fairly highly valued. Then Powell says we're not targeting prices for financial assets. Powell says it's not a time of elevated financial stability risks. And I want to make this very clear. I've talked about this before a lot on the channel, but the US economy is so diversified that we don't just go into a recession, right? You need a catalyst, you need an event, you need an oil price shock, you need something to happen. Now, unfortunately, I think we're at that moment where if something did happen, some kind of shock, not even like a huge one, but like a shock, a decent sized shock were to happen, we would be in risk of some kind of recession or rapid labor market cool down. Okay. Until that happens, though, like a recession, it can't be the base case, right? Now, if a shock event does happen, we will know about it. I will keep you posted. We will be hedging in the trading community. But until that happens, it's really business as usual. Like, are we seeing some weakness in the labor market? Yes. Could Wall Street get nervous around that? Yes. Could that cause a little pullback? Yes. But recession? No. Economy's too diversified. You don't just go into a recession because there's so many different areas of this economy that you really need a shock event to get multiple different industries to go through a significant amount of pain at the same time, to really prompt massive layoffs. Like, that just doesn't tend to happen. Okay, so we're going to be watching. We're going to be vigilant. But I think it's clear. We're likely setting up for a very strong end of the year rally in 2026. Now, a lot of the provisions that are set to help the consumer don't start helping the consumer, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, being able to write off, interest paid on car loans, interest rates falling in general, are really not going to have much of a positive impact on the consumer until spring of 2026, until tax time. You don't actually realize the benefits of no tax on tips or no tax on overtime, for an example. That is realized on your tax return. Okay. So I think by mid-year, things are going to start looking a lot better next year. Okay. Between now and then, though, is when we want to be not nervous, a little cautious on, is there a shock event? Like, if there is, that's something we're going to pay a lot of attention to. But right now, there's not. So let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.